no one in the media outside of us here on GB News is even talking about this World Health Organization treaty, let alone holding the government to account over it, right?
That's right. That's not that I've heard. I mean, the only reason I heard of it was that I keep tabs on the Together organisation,
Yes,
which was founded by Alan Miller, and you've had him on the programme, and he's wonderful. So I get in conjunction with them, I realised about this treaty, and I wrote, like a lot of other people connected with Together did. I'm enormously concerned about your drive to Boris to create a new pandemic preparedness treaty with the World Health Organization, as well as amendments being touted to the international health regulations. I ask you to ensure that we have a full debate in both houses of Parliament, an independent review that assesses the treaty, proposed amendments and implications, as we now know that what constitutes a threat varies greatly depending on how it's evaluated and what assumptions are used. The modelling's, as we know, pretty dicey. A public debate is needed, televised live, should Britain sign a new pandemic preparedness strategy with the World Health Organization. And we need an undertaking that you, Boris, will not proceed with any agreement that substitutes British sovereign decisions and accountability to any supranational unaccountable organisation. So, and a lot of people have written the same, the auspices of Together.
Well, I completely agree with everything you've just said, but Sue, I guess what we need to investigate here, because obviously you're someone who's so experienced in the media, is why the BBC, your former employer, isn't asking those questions. Surely that's their role as the public broadcaster.
Well, you'd think so. I don't understand it. I wonder whether, I have all sorts of wonderings and theories. I wonder whether perhaps it's a budget thing. So a lot of news these days comes via news agencies, and there are only 3 main news agencies. So maybe they're not getting their feed through. Maybe it's a bit of laziness. I don't know. Maybe they don't quite know. Maybe they think, well, we'll wait and see what happens. But then what worries me is that by then it might be a fait accompli. We need to get at the government before they go into these talks, not after. So yes, we need to hear about it. I was quite amazed actually with the Twitter what an enormous response that tweet got. So people need to know.
Yes, indeed, and I think it's because it's missing from the rest of the media. So the other thing I wonder about is, was it something to do with this Ofcom warning that was put out near the start of the pandemic and made it very clear that media organisations should be careful if they were challenging public health advice? I mean, we've had Mark Sharman give evidence to this lockdown inquiry. He's the bloke who used to run Sky News. I mean, he actually used to be in charge of all of the news on ITV. And he said that this Ofcom warning was chilling.
Yes, I did. I've got a copy of that too. Ofcom says to the media, we strongly advise you to take particular care when broadcasting, for example, unverified information about the coronavirus. This may include, for instance, discussion of unverified theories. Incidentally, there's a massive thunderstorm going on out here. I don't know if you can hear the thunder.
Goodness.
I hope I don't get so anyway, the Ofcom guidance says the unverified theories for the causes of the coronavirus and discussion of potential treatments or cures for the coronavirus that do not align with the advice of the NHS or other public health authorities, well, that rules out almost anything that might be against the main narrative. And there are, of course, lots of other viewpoints. And they also advise against making statements that seek to question or undermine the advice of public health bodies on the coronavirus, or otherwise undermine people's trust in the advice of mainstream sources of information about the disease. So that's effectively hobbling the media. They can't platform anybody who doesn't say exactly what the main narrative is. And the main narrative is, as prescribed by SAGE, to frighten everybody to the point where they comply and they stay indoors and behave themselves, as if people need to be treated like that, because people are sensible enough to know whether they're in danger and when is a good idea not to go out if they're not feeling well or if they're mixing with people who might have the virus. People are sensible enough to make their own decisions without being treated like babies.
Well, indeed. And of course, one of those public health organisations, Sue, is the World Health Organization. And we know that they pretty much got everything wrong. But look, you sent over a list to me earlier, and you actually said there's lots of other areas the media should have properly investigated. SAGE, PCR tests, Pfizer. I mean, there were lots of areas that were so important for the media to investigate, and they simply didn't.
I know what happened to investigative journalists. I mean, in the old days when I was there, you would have a balanced view. You would have context. You would go out and you'd find out who these people were on stage. There were a bunch of shadowy figures. I have no idea about any of them, so I won't say anything personal about any of them, but there were some conflicts, possible conflicts of interest, and we just needed to know who these people were who were dictating our lives. The PCR test varied in all the different testing laboratories. What they needed was an investigative journalist to go in there or get an insider and take the same sample to different laboratories and see what different results came up, because I bet you would have got a whole set of different results from different laboratories. People were testing kiwi fruits and apples and getting positive results, weren't they? Whether that was true or not, but you needed an investigative look at it to find out if these things were true or bonkers or not.
Sue, do you believe that the BBC remains independent?
I think the BBC is a different animal now. At first, I was just amazed at the lack of investigative journalism. Then I was shocked, and now I'm quite angry because it's our public service broadcaster. We need a broadcaster who we can feel is impartial, independent, who will take up the cudgels for regular, ordinary people. We need that, and I think it's gone, and I think it's gone forever. I don't think it can come back, and I think it's an absolute tragedy. And the result of that is that we can't trust anything that we see. I mean, we've got the Ukraine war on, we've got the energy crisis, we've got inflation at a 40-year high, we've got cost of living crisis. We need to have media that we can trust. And I think the BBC would have been the go-to organisation for all these things, and it isn't now. That's not to say that there aren't some wonderful people in the BBC. There are still some fantastic journalists and fantastic producers, but somehow they're being hobbled. I mean, look at wonderful people like Lisa Doucette and Frank Gardner, and there are some wonderful people. I'd be interested to know what John Sargent thinks in your studio there, but there are some wonderful people still, but it just seems that they're not getting the airtime, and the productions aren't the same. You're not getting debates, you're not getting balance, you're not getting perspective, you're not getting context.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.